Anyways, again, thank you for coming. I just want to quickly acknowledge before we introduce our speaker. Like to acknowledge two of our board members from the Works Compensation Board, Larry Flowers. Larry went, I don't know where Larry just went. Oh, there he is, I'm sorry. And Gary Haviland, and thank you for coming. Also, colleagues from many of our industry based associations, Warren Douglas from CODC CLR, Doug Folk from Electrical Contractors Association, Brenda Broughton from Regina Construction Association, and Carolyn Bagnon, who's on our board from for the mechanical contractors, Chris Garrett from the home builders, and there was one other, and I just I'm sorry, Gord Moker. How could I forget Gord? Or I've tried to forget Gord. Maybe that's how I should say, but Gord from Safe from Safe Sask, and really appreciate all of you taking the time to attend with us today. So I'm going to introduce Mike. I don't need a lot of a bio for him, but I will tell you a few things. Mike, as you said, March 1st is actually your anniversary date. 10 years with the province, with the Ministry of Labor, and it's kind of its predecessor format as well. Mike came to the province from the private sector, where he worked for a number of years in HR, industrial relations, and a few others, both in kind of the manufacturing, I think both from manufacturing sector. Is that right? And I met Mike, I think the first time I met Mike is actually when he interviewed me several years ago. And he told me to get out of the office and don't ever come back, all sorts of nice things like that. But many of you know him in his current role as Deputy Minister of Labor Relations and Workplace Safety, and he's been working diligently on that file for all these years. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. His schedule is extremely full, and often tough to get in. But I'm really glad he was able to take some time with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mike Carr.
Thank you very much, Colin, for those kind words. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here today and to speak with representatives of a very important sector of our economy and a very important sector of our whole approach to safety. Most of you in the room, I see a number of familiar faces, and those of you that know me know that I like to get up and run my gums, and I particularly like to talk about safety while doing so. As with so many things in life, keeping our workplaces safe and healthy is impossible without regular communication, teamwork, and commitment. And that commitment generally flows from the top of organizations, and the more effectively that commitment flows through the organization to the front line, the safer the outcomes will be for workers. From a practical perspective, I wanted to, in my remarks today, talk and walk you through a series of, if you will, a historical perspective over the past 10 years, where we've been, where we've gotten to, and where I hope we're going. I've been really pleased to see the strengthening of the relationship between the Occupational Health and Safety Division and the Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association over the past number of years. As we've worked together on creating safer workplaces and work sites across the province, we've had a significant impact. And that significant impact is something I want to share with you today. Because that significant impact points to a set of issues that I think we need to continue our collaboration on to overcome. And that's a cultural issue. The simple truth is that here in Saskatchewan, we as citizens have a tremendously high tolerance for risk. We have a significant willingness to accept injuries as a normal part of our human activities, whether they occur in the workplace, at home, in our schools or on our playgrounds, in our sports arenas, or simply driving down the street. And the dilemma for me is that that particular culture demonstrates a persistence in terms of accepting the consequence of injury. And the consequence of injury, which my colleagues from the Workers' Compensation Board know only too well, is not only a financial impact, but it's a significant personal impact for those who are injured. This high-risk tolerance that we seem to have generated really springs from some very positive attributes. I think that one of the strengths that we have as a province and as a community is that we have a tendency to come together and just get things done. And we have a tendency to do those things with a very significant degree of effectiveness in terms of money expended and time expended. But as I've mentioned earlier, we tend to do it with a significant tolerance for injury and risk. One of the interesting things that I would share with you today is that my ministry does a very significant amount of work with young people entering out in their first occupational undertaking. We do that through our Young Worker Readiness Certificate program. And since developing the program, we've actually developed an online survey for each user. And one of the interesting things for me in that survey, as it's reported out each quarter, is we ask a question. And the question is, do you agree or strongly agree? We just ask them to respond. Into the statement, workplace injuries are a normal part of life here in Saskatchewan. And what I find simply amazing is that consistently, year over year, 25% of respondents indicate that they strongly agree or agree. 25% of those folks who've responded. And to date, we have had over 60,000 youth take the Young Worker Readiness Certificate program. More surprisingly, about the same number of respondents to that survey have indicated that they believe that you have to get hurt in order to learn. In other words, getting hurt is a normal part of the learning process in order to become successful and better at what we do. What concerns me about that, both as a parent and grandparent and as a regulator, is that that tells me that the risk tolerance that I spoke about earlier is continuing to be persistently demonstrated in our youth. This attitude that injuries are just a part of life translates into real pain and suffering for those of us that have experienced work-related injuries. And it means that for those of us that have taken on the significant obligation to employ others, that we have a very, very significant challenge within our workplaces in order to overcome that attitude. What it does mean to me is that 25% of those whom you employ will think about engaging in risky behavior far ahead of those that you would wish to employ. And it means that our workplaces are going to continue to be susceptible to the risk of illness and work-related injury as a result of those attitudes. That means to me that fundamentally we need to get a different focus in our safety programming, because attitude is not something you can train for. We need to generate the expectation in the safety training, the how we do our work safely, to take on very directly this conversation about what's your attitude about the work we ask you to do. And we need to say to them that we are risk intolerant. And we need to take on that very direct message that unless they demonstrate risk intolerance, they will not be successful in our organizations. What I find interesting is that most of you may know that I came out of the steel industry, and the steel industry had a horrendous record 30 years ago in terms of tolerance for injury. In fact, when I first joined IPSCO, a number of my compatriots suggested to me that I just didn't understand the industry because injury was just part of the process of making steel. It took a significant investment of time and energy to change that approach and that attitude, but it occurred. And when I left that organization, they had worked 7.5 million person hours lost time injury free. They didn't get there in 3 years, but they did get there in 10 years. In terms of the significant impact these questions have had on my thinking around safety, we refined the course, and the content in the course now delivers a series of information pieces about risk-engaging behavior. And so we then ask the question after the course has ended and people have taken it. And what we found is a significant improvement in that result. So what I'm sharing with you is the idea that yes, we can change attitudes, but we have to do it consistently and persistently from the top through the management of the organization down to the front line. We continue to have a significant problem that is very much on Gord Moker's mind from day to day to day and hour to hour, and that is the persistently high frequency of unintentional injury across the province. Again, I would share with you that in my view, that result that Gord measures and monitors and speaks to through Safe Saskatchewan is fundamentally influenced by the same cultural risks and the acceptance of risk that I spoke of earlier. Our get-her-done attitude is simply admirable. I've had the pleasure of employing and hiring staff in 24 different jurisdictions across North America. And in that experience, I can share with you candidly that folks from Saskatchewan actually have an attitude about getting it done that is the envy of North American jurisdictions. But what we need to say to them is let's get her done safely. And if we make safety the lens through getting it done is viewed, we will be far more successful. I joined, as you've heard earlier, Labor Relations and Workplace Safety when it was in a previous iteration in 2008. At that time, we had a significant experience in terms of injury rates. Saskatchewan had, for the previous 20 years, either been the least safest jurisdiction in Canada or the second least safest jurisdiction in Canada. We made some conscious decisions at that time, and we actually, through the partnership with WorkSafe Saskatchewan, with WCB and my ministry, struck a provincial injury reduction strategy, which now has become known as Mission Zero and has become known as the WorkSafe process. And we've been able to, through your collaboration and cooperation and the collaboration of colleagues from other sectors of the economy, see a significant reduction in that overall injury rate. But it's really a focus on zero that we're trying to take forward. We are going to see experience due to injury or work-related illness. There's no doubt about that. But if our focus is on anything other than zero, we're not going to reach the objectives that we need to ensure the safety of those we employ. If I look at experiences within your sector, so if I look at construction and its related rate codes, we have seen some significant improvement. What I'm showing you here is B11, and when you look at that particular rate code, you can see that when we started the targeted intervention strategy late in 2012, the injury rate, the top line is the total injury rate for B11 was 13.19%. Last year, 2017, it was 8.02%. I'm pleased to see the rate of decline. What I'm concerned about is that you're still significantly higher than the provincial average. The green lines are the provincial average. The box, again, is the total injury rate. The triangle is the time loss injury rate. What's fascinating to me, again, is that when you look at that, we've narrowed the gap a bit, but we still have a persistently high level of injury, higher than the average. One of the things that I would share with you is that when we look at that, it demonstrates to me that you've made significant investments around time, energy, and resources to impact your injury rates. The question I have for you is, what do we need to do? Because what's of greatest concern to me is, if you look at 16 and 17, the rate of decline, both in terms of the injury rate for the province and the total injury rate, the time loss injury rate rather, for both this sector and the province, is stalling out. That's despite very significant investments by you, by us, by the board, on trying to move us closer to zero. If we look at B12, B12 is I think, residential construction. And when you look at B12, again, you see the benefits of significant investment in reducing the overall injury rate. But again, you see that stalling out. You see that again, the rate of decline has markedly deteriorated. Now, that's also true in the overall economy. And so it's not something unique or specific to your sector, but it is something, from my perspective, when we started targeted intervention in 2012, we were coming off a period where we had stalled. So we made very little difference between 2011 into 2012. And so we determined that we needed to do something different. That difference was targeted intervention. We're now at a point where we've dealt with all of the major large employers in the province. We're now at a point where we're dealing with small to medium-sized employers, and we're dealing with people that perhaps don't have the same sophistication that a number of you folks have around how to deal with safety. If you look at what's going on, it's a concern because not only have injury rates been traditionally moving downward in this province, and in this province at a rate far greater than our competing jurisdictions, but they've also been moving down across Canada. And I think the interesting thing here again is that if we had not stalled out, if we did in fact hit the targets that we had set under WorkSafe Saskatchewan for the provincial economy for last year, we'd have moved into probably 5th worst from 3rd worst. We still, over that period of time from 2012 to 2016, have demonstrated a far superior rate of reduction in our overall injury rate experience. But the challenge, I guess, for us to think through is that we appear to be stalling out. So what is it going to take for us to continue and move this to the next level? If we look here at 13, which is the industrial commercial segment, the concern here is that you had significantly improving trends, and last year you saw a spike. You saw it moving upwards. That's a concern as well, because in the same time that that experience has been demonstrated, we as a regulator have collaborated with your safety association and done 2 successive years of blitzes in terms of trying to improve that outcome. I'm not saying that what we invested was wasted. It was certainly a good experience both for the member companies that we dealt with and us as a regulator, but it didn't produce the desired result. When I look at your segment and your industry, it's important to point out that in 2016 and 2017, 12% of Saskatchewan employers accounted for 100% of experienced injuries. That's a significant improvement from where we were in 2012, when 16% of Saskatchewan employers accounted for 100% of the injuries. What's interesting about that analysis is that I would say the experience in each of your rate codes demonstrated that when management takes a focus to an outcome, it drives improvement. And so what I guess I'm talking about when we do the analysis around what you've experienced in your various sectors, the significant types of injuries that we've seen are open wounds, which may be a result of amputation, impact with equipment or machinery, falling, traumatic injuries to muscles, tendons, ligaments, and joints, which are often the product of extended use and not appropriate rest and recovery. Other traumatic injuries, surface wounds such as scratches, scrapes, cuts, and bruises, and then traumatic injuries, which tend to be broken bones, nerve damage, spinal cord injury around bad backs, often related to slips, trips, and falls, or to falls from height. When we think about most common injuries, let's talk for a minute about what we see as cause. Contact with objects and equipment, bodily reaction and exertion. Bodily reaction and exertion is, again, overuse, strain, and prolonged continued use once a strain has occurred. Falls continue to be the most significant cause of injury in a number of segments of your sector. Exposure to harmful substances or environments, those are often things related to paints and other things that are used in the construction process. If we look at what are the most commonly injured parts, not surprisingly, hands and legs. Yours is still a very labor-intensive occupational pursuit, and in that you see the risk that individuals are experiencing in terms of their hands, legs, backs, arms, and eyes. One of the things I would share with you is that a significant number of hand injuries can be prevented by PPE. A significant number of back injuries can be prevented by good work practice. Issues related to eyes, almost universally preventable by the use of safety eyewear. When we look at the regulator's perspective in this conversation, what are we citing individuals in your sector for? Most often, failure to provide appropriate fall protection or a failure to ensure compliance with fall protection requirements. Failure to use protective headgear. Often a decision made by a worker, not by their employer, but often not corrected by a supervisor on the site. Contraventions, including risk to health and safety, these are things where often it's a situation where the employer has failed to acknowledge the risk associated with a particular undertaking. Things have gone badly. We get a call because there's a serious injury, and we find that there's things like guarding missing around open holes, that there's a failure to ensure appropriate training, or there's a situation where someone who's been injured was injured by something falling on them. Most significantly, when we're out dealing with incidents, the most often cited communication around contravention relates to supervision of work. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have a supervisor on every work site. It simply means that somebody needs to have a designated responsibility to ensure that those who are working on that site are adequately supervised. And that's an area that maybe isn't as fully explored by your sector as it might be. We used to have the same issues in manufacturing, and then we saw the emergence of a tool in manufacturing called the lead hand or gang leader process, where they were assuming responsibility for directing the workforce when an active supervisor wasn't present. Footwear. This one baffles me, folks. I simply don't get this one. I simply do not understand, having come out of manufacturing. I spent 18 years in meat processing and slaughter, and 11 years in steel manufacturing. I don't get it. Your activity and enterprise is essentially based on the ability of your workers to perform their God-given talents on your behalf to deliver an outcome on your sites. that is, do the work, and we see people wearing running shoes. We see people not using appropriate footwear, headgear, and eye protection. And I gotta say candidly, that's a management problem. So your tolerance for that risk ends up being directly reflected in your injury rate. If we look at kind of our experience, bringing it right up to date as of December 31st, 17, you can see that we've had a very, very significant improvement in terms of the overall reduction. What's interesting, in this chart I'm showing you priority employers that are those who are in our targeted intervention program. There's now 174 workplaces that are in that program. You can see that we started out, they had a 10.53% injury rate, down to a 5.29. So what I'm demonstrating there is almost a 50% reduction in the injury rate of those 174 workplaces we've focused our attention on. The problem, quite frankly, I have is that I don't have enough resources to put boots on the ground in 30,000 or 36,000 workplaces. I don't even have boots on the ground, if you look at a 12% analysis of that, to put boots on the ground in 10,000 workplaces. On any given year, the best that we're going to do with existing resources is I'm going to visit somewhere between 4,800 and 5,000 workplaces. We have focused an effort on these 174 workplaces and driven their injury rate down with their collaboration, their cooperation, and their active participation by nearly 50%. The concern that we have going forward is, again, you'll see the same issue I spoke of earlier, where there's a flattening in both categories in terms of the overall reduction of total injury rates. That flattening, we think, is due now to the fact that we've dealt with all the big major contributors, got them a 50% reduction through their good work. Now we're in a situation where we're dealing with smaller, less sophisticated workplaces. And in that circumstance, we're having a much more difficult time getting the change that we need. That may speak to culture, but it also speaks to resources. One of the things that those of you that are proactive and are spending a lot of time engaging with WorkSafe Saskatchewan and the Workers' Compensation Board is you'll see the 4 pillars. Those of you that have well-developed safety programs, I'm preaching to the choir, you get this already. But the problem again is that there's a significant 12%. It's actually 11.82% of your sector accounted for 100% of your injuries last year. So what we are seeing across the economy, you're replicating. Those of you that have a good safety program are generating terrific results for your organization. Your workplaces are statistically safer to work in than those that do not have this process. From our perspective, Mission Zero is what we're about. 0 injuries, 0 fatalities, 0 suffering. In order for us to get there, in order for you to get there, we need to see a doubling down into those areas. And we need to make sure that you're sharing your good work with your colleagues. A number of you are in a position every year and on every project where you're hiring sub-trades. Simple question is, do you hold your sub-trades to the same standard you hold yourselves? There's been a great deal of controversy over the last couple of years about ISM Networld and other reporting agencies that are providing information to organizations wanting to let contracts and actually using that criteria as one of the bases upon which they are going to award work. And the challenge is that some folks have figured out that they're going to have to, in terms of the bidding process, be qualified. One of the ways to make sure that there's effectiveness there is CORE, because CORE will give you this. CORE will give you the pillars. Through the pillars, you can then demonstrate safe work practice. If you demonstrate safe work practice, your injury rate will go down. And you will have, it's kind of a cycle based on entropy. The more you invest in that activity, the greater the returns are going to be, the more easy it is for you to qualify for other opportunities. The simple truth is that it's a competitive marketplace. You all know that far better than I. But we are seeing people wanting to develop work projects being very, very selective now and using a number of tools in order to help them make the best choice as to who they're going to award their business to. When we think about the activities I've described to you about your injury experience and about what we see in conjunction with the WCB, there's a number of things that I need you to think about in terms of how you move forward from your current situation as a sector and how you generate greater value through your safety association. Because the simple fact is that this safety association, like a number of other safety associations in the province, provides the state-of-the-art in terms of opportunities for knowledge transfer, good programming, and effective training delivery. The problem that I would ask you to think about is the one around service delivery and uptake. Because it's not the folks that are investing the time and energy and putting their staff through the training and through the qualification and the certification process that we have an issue with. It's those who are on the outside and are focused on other things. But you may choose whether you wish to do business with them or not. One of the things I'd strongly encourage you to, and this is a lesson I learned in the steel industry, the Steel Manufacturers Association struck a safety committee in 1998 because the industry was in a crisis with respect to the number of fatalities they were experiencing. And so a number of us got together in Atlanta and we had a conversation about whether we could learn from each other. And that conversation actually was very, very productive. We produced a safety alert system that allowed member companies to share in real time information related to incidents. And as a result of that information exchange, we were able to send out national warnings across North America. The SMA is an organization representing the steel industry that represents every steel producer, every steel manufacturer, and every steel distributor in North America. And it was a very effective mechanism in order to gain a center of excellence and a synergy around improvement to solve common problems. We used to kill 2 or 3 people a year in rail transfer. And that's the move from mainline distribution railways onto our work sites and the loading of cars and the transfer of those loaded cars back out into the system for distribution to customers. When I left the IPSCO and joined government, we had gone 2 full years without a reportable fatality in rail movement. Whereas before, we were seeing 11 a year on average fatalities. So when you get together and share best practice, when you have a conduit to share information around safety, and quite frankly, safety is not proprietary. All of you are ratepayers in the WCB system based on the injury rate that you bring to the table, but also the injury rate your colleagues bring to the table. So there's something there, I think, for you to think about. I want to spend a minute and just talk about the work that you've done as an organization. There's so many significant things that you've done to contribute to that reduced injury experience. And you've got a lot to be proud of. But what I want to do again is go back to this invitation I started with. Recognizing that we're plateauing, we need to come together and we need to figure out what we can do differently to improve the overall outcomes moving forward. We've demonstrated huge benefit from collaboration and sharing best practices. That's something that our officers do in real time in every workplace they enter. But it's also something we've done at a higher level and where we've had conversations with the sectors and the work now that Kevin Mooney is leading with Phil Germain at WCB. There's some huge opportunities here, I think, to leverage collective wisdom and drive stronger outcomes. I, of course, have a different tool that I can use if collaboration is failing, and it's one that we have used very much to the success of my organization, and that is prosecution. It's not the first tool out of the tool bag, but it's a tool that we have used where we've had serious injuries and fatalities, and we haven't got an appropriate response from employers. The simple fact is that we believe at our root that all incidents are preventable, all injuries are preventable, and all fatalities are preventable, even those that we experience on our roadways. The question is, how do we generate a strong enough focus to bring everybody to the same level of understanding so that they take fewer risks? With the introduction of the Saskatchewan Employment Act, we've seen the development of a couple of tools. One is summary offense ticketing. So I now have 12 officers across the province who are capable of issuing fines for 12 offenses. Those offenses are things like failure to respond, failure to report, failure to use PPE. Some of those are directed at workers. And those are now being used as a way of correcting behavior. But we also have a situation where the fines under our regime have significantly increased. We've now gone from a maximum fine of $300,000 for corporations to a maximum fine of $1.5 million. That was a purposeful, intentional act on the part of government saying, look, if we're going to change our injury rate, we need to get the attention of people who are decision makers. For individuals, the maximum fine went from $100,000 to $500,000. That's not an insignificant amount of money. Most recently, the courts have taken that regime and they've, in two circumstances, issued fines in excess of $300,000. The reason I share this with you is not to provide you with a threat. It's to provide you, I hope, with some motivation to understand that the rules have changed and that the courts are going to be very, very significantly assessing responsibility and culpability in the fine process. And where there's a fatality or serious injury, the fines are going up. It's really up to each of you to choose which model you prefer: collaboration, both through your safety association and through the ministry, or the alternative. I'm hoping you'll choose collaboration. It's where we prefer to do our work. But if not, we have an obligation and a duty which we'll discharge to do the other. One of the things that I would think about fundamentally, and this is something that officers report to me all of the time. They often go into a work site and they look at the procedures manual and it's perfect. But when they look at the procedures manual and then they look at what the application of those procedures are on the site, they see a difference. And in that difference, that's where the risk lies. There's no point in generating a set of policies and procedures as something to hang on a shelf. If they're not being operationalized and utilized, change them, because what you are doing should be reflected in your policies. And if you're not doing what you say you're going to do, the consequence of that failure may very well be a prosecution. So you need to think carefully about how your leaders are executing in the field the things that you've agreed to in head office. One of the significant things that I would invite you to think about as you look at the pillars approach is all of you know where you sit. And one of the greatest tools that I've exercised in my time in the private sector has been the audit tool. The ability to get out from behind your desk, actually go for a walk, and observe how things are being done. And in that observation, you'll find a significant differentiation between what's being reported to you in paper and what the reality is for the men and women who are working for you on the front line. From that perspective, one of the greatest opportunities in all organizations that I've experienced is go out and look for yourself. I want to share with you the example of one of the most significant improvement stories in our province's history. prior to 1950, the only mining activity in this province was hard rock mining based in 3 products: uranium, gold, and some iron ore. By 1962, potash had been discovered, and so we've now had 50 years of experience in potash mining. When potash mining first started, there was a significant spike in injury rates in the province. Why? Because when they were first starting up, we had 3,000 people doing their work largely with picks, shovels, some rudimentary mining machines, and we were wearing people out like rented mules. That industry took a close look at that about 30 years ago. It was the case that soft rock mining was a significant, risky undertaking. It's now among the safest undertakings in manufacturing, and it's statistically safer than working in healthcare. How did that happen? It happened by owners of companies, managers of companies, leaders of unions, workers coming together and deciding that they owned it, that they needed to make sure that their mission was safety first. In terms of that experience, because they've become now one of the safest, and when I say they're one of the safest, I'm talking about their total injury rate. They still experience on average 1.2 fatalities a year, which has been the rate of fatalities in that sector for 40 years. We've invited them to think about that. What is the mining sector doing? Well, one of the things they're doing that's impressed me is that they come together now, and they're just about to host their 3rd annual Safety Summit, where they allocate seats to member companies, and they require participation. The price of admission into that summit is that you have to come and you have to make a presentation on an issue of concern related to safety during that day. It's quite an impressive undertaking. It's them focusing on their issues, saying we're going to be world leaders. And I got to tell you, it hasn't hurt that companies like BHP Billiton have entered that community, because that raised the bar fairly significantly for all of them. The challenge I think I have in terms of where we are is that we're in a situation where not only do those minds come together and use a best practice model around sharing information, they also have an annual competition. They compete with each other based on their safety performance. And they now have significant prizes available that reflect that. You're emulating some of that as well. It's something that I want to encourage and really thank you for, because it does make a difference. We are competitive at our very base as humans. And so when we've got something worth competing for, we tend to do our best work. In terms of the overall approach to where are we going? Well, OHS is going to continue to do our best to make workplaces safer. We're going to reach out to you and try and collaborate. We're going to do the things we need to do to hold those that are not paying attention accountable for that. We're also going to deal with some very significant opportunities to improve our data. And so we're trying to work with the Workers' Compensation Board now to try and get better information about injury experience, try to figure out where the injuries are happening, what time of the day, what's the occupational undertaking that individuals are pursuing at the time of injury, so that we can start to focus our resources even more sharply on trying to get at the why. In terms of opportunities, the targeted intervention strategy is going to be redefined. We're going to go through a bit of a revision of it in order to focus on those small to medium-sized employers, because we recognize that we have to take a different approach to them than we have the first 174 inductees in the program. At this point, it's pretty clear that we need to do more outreach and try to change the culture of the province and the culture of workplaces generally. There's some great examples of wonderful cultures, some of them in this room. but there's more we need to do to make that more universally acceptable. I want to share with you that of the 174 priority employers that we've dealt with through targeted intervention, that reduction in their injury rate has translated into something very meaningful. 2,500 fewer injuries annually. The average cost of an injury to WCB is something right around $12,000. So when you do the math, you know, that $26 to $30 million fewer costs, what does that translate in? Something you have all recently enjoyed, a reduction in premiums. In terms of other things, though, those 2,500 fewer incidents have resulted in fewer trips to the emergency room. It's resulted in greater than access to treatment and diagnosis for those that are in the system due to non-work-related activity. When we think about the lives, those 2,500 fewer injuries mean that 2,500 fewer families have had to suffer the consequences of work-related injury or illness. What's interesting about our targeted intervention process is that now other jurisdictions who have not had the same success we've had in terms of rate of decline want to use that approach. Our hope is that through conversations like this, we can generate a greater adherence to safety as a principle and a lifestyle, but also that we can do something about compliance. I mentioned to you my concern about PPE. If the employer provides it, it better be used. If it's not being used, it's a management problem. In terms of the blitzes that we've done with the SCSA over the past 2 years and will continue this year, I think we've driven some significant improvement in terms of generating awareness and responsiveness. And I hope what we're seeing on those blitzes is being continued when we're not out in those communities doing the blitz. The last thing I'd like to say before I open it up for questions, and Colin, I'm not sure how much time we've got left. I want to say again that you have done some very credible, important, and significant work as a sector, whether you're in B12, B11, or B13. The work that you've done is something I'm very grateful for. But I am concerned that we've stalled. And I am concerned that we find ways to move beyond where we are to get to where we need to be. One of the things that government accepted when I shot my mouth off in a cabinet process was when they were thinking about the growth strategy and how do we sustain growth in the province. Said one of the things you need to think about is what the impact would be of reducing our injury rate by 50%. The opportunity cost to the province in terms of net economic benefit through a 50% reduction in our injury experience is something approaching $800 million a year. That's the level of the opportunity we're talking about when we're saying we can do something significant by reducing the injury rate. Government bought the Kool-Aid. They put a 50% reduction into their plan for growth. My concern is, based on what we experienced in 2017, we're not going to reach that target. 2020 is 2 years away. 3 if I take the full year. We need to see a 12% overall sustained reduction in our provincial injury rate between now and, well, actually it's more than that because that number was based on a 10% reduction in the provincial injury rate last year, and we only made 5.4% reduction. So I think we're back approaching something around 16 to 18% is what we need to achieve over the next 3 years. And we can't do it unless we all focus on it. So that's going to be one of the things I'll be talking about more broadly across the economy. It's one of the things I hope you'll embrace as a challenge and that you'll work to be the leaders you have been in the past and step up to this challenge with us as your regulator. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. You're not throwing buns. I take that as a good sign. Go, Ryan.
The SCSA, how's core viewed as far as credibility and effectiveness?
I'm going to say to you that there's some challenges there. I think that core has huge potential. I think that it has a very significant attribute in that you've got a standard set of learnings and practices that can be applied across your sector. The problem that I have is what I had in steel, quite frankly. We became core certified in Alberta in 2000. We got an immediate 15% reduction in our WCB premiums. Our experienced injury rate went down significantly as a result of core, but all of the other steel companies that qualified in the same core process didn't pay a whit of care for it. Their injury rate went up, and my company ended up subsidizing poor performance in competitors. That was a tough sell with my board. Now, in terms of my perspective as a regulator, my perspective is different. My perspective as a regulator is if someone can say to me they're core certified, that gives me a set of standards to judge their performance by. If you're core certified and continue to have a high injury rate, there's something broken. But if you've got core certified and a reducing injury rate, you're on the right track, keep going. I think core is good. I think core is very useful. But if you're getting core just so you can qualify as a preferred bidder on work, save your time and energy, because your injury rate's going to be high and you're going to be visited by regulators who are going to have citation books in their hands. Any other questions?
Dave Hagan.
You talked about increasing the fines and all that, and you're visiting the employers. What about taking those fines and applying them more to the prime contract? Again, the people have been told they're buying the performance. So hold them accountable.
Well, one of the things that we did now 6 years ago is we recrafted the prime contractor provisions under our regulations, and we will do that. One of the things that I didn't speak of that I will speak to now is whenever you see pressure on rates and you see pressure on bidding based on qualification or safety performance, you see organizations gravitating to mechanisms that may perhaps shade or hide their experience. And they often will do that. This is a model that came out of the United States about 20 years ago. You'll see companies spinning off other entities as their labor supplier. And so all of the injury rates go to the labor supply company, and the other company, the head office, the brain trust, the design and implementation element, doesn't have an injury rate that's very bad at all. We're saying, well, we don't care how you do your business, but as a regulator, we care whether those injuries are attributable to you or not. So we're actually going to start a process this year where we're going to follow the money. And we're going to start asking those stronger questions about who's the prime contractor, who holds this contract for service or outcome, and then who have they engaged to deliver the service. So that accountability is coming. Any other questions? I hope I didn't give anybody indigestion. And I thank you very much again for the opportunity to come and spend some time with you.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate that. Great. Well, again, thank you, Mike. There's lots to think about for the industry. You know, obviously for our board, our team at the SCSA, but also for the buyers of construction, those who are in the contracting and then subcontracting roles as well. I have to say, really appreciate working with you as well as the WCB board. You know, often we end up having to have very difficult but much needed conversations. And we've all been learning together, I guess, over the last few years that our next stages of success require us to work and change together, whether that be at OHS within the association itself or at the WCB table as well. So again, thank you for your time, Mike. Thank you for sharing this with us today. We are going to move into our next part of the business, but we're going to take a break. We'll give 10 minutes, but we're going to start right after this 10-minute break. For those who are guests, you're welcome to stay for this part of the meeting in addition to our members, or for the next part of our meeting. But I do understand that some of you have to get back to your offices and stuff. So with that, we'll say thank you and have a great day, and we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes. So thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 23rd Annual General Meeting for the SCSA. Thank everybody for coming in. First off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ryan Smutra. I work for Graham Construction. I'm currently the chairperson for the Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association Board of Directors. Before we get going, I'd like to address a few of the housekeeping safety issues. So there are fire extinguishers located in every room. There's one right there, and I believe on the other side by the coat rack. AED is beside conference room 4 to the left, heading out the doors in case we need that. There, in the event of a fire or an alarm, there are 2 exits. Will be directed by the staff which way to go out. We will muster at Lot G in front of the box office. So follow the crowd, stay calm. To get started, we'll call the meeting to order. I suppose I need a motion to call the meeting to order. No? Do I need a motion, Colin? First off, I'd like to start by introducing the 2017 board members. And if you don't mind, as I call your name, stand up, show who you are, and just remain standing until all the introductions are done. The list of the 2017 executive board members in attendance today, myself, Ryan Smutra, who's current chair, vice chair and SCSA or SCA representative to the executive committee, Jason Davidson. Past chair and Canadian Home Builders Association rep to the executive committee, Errol Fisher. Canadian Home Builders Association representative to the executive committee, Chris Garrett. The SCA representative, Mark Novakoski. The Electrical Contractors Association of Saskatchewan, Adam Erickson, representing Garnet and Connolly. General Contractors Association representative, Keith Bird. The Mechanical Contractors Association of Saskatchewan representative, Carolyn Bagnall. The Trade Association Industry rep, David Hagan. The Trade Association Structural Representative, Dana Pidell. The Sask Roofing Contractors Association, Vernon Hunt. The Saskatchewan Provincial Builders and Construction Trades Representative, Dion Malakoff and Mike Skripnik. Estevan Regional Safety Committee Employer Rep, Len Mostaway. The Regional Safety Committee Regina Regional Safety Committee Employer Rep, Milena Gorick. The Regina Regional Safety Committee Worker Rep, Alexandra Chase. The Prince Albert Regional Safety Committee Employer Rep, Clayton Clark. The Yorkton Regional Safety Committee Employer Rep, Brian Hilderman. The Saskatoon Regional Safety Committee Employer Rep, Pearl McNevin Williams. And the Saskatchewan Regional Safety Committee Worker Rep, or Saskatoon Regional Safety Committee Worker Rep, Jason McLeod. I'd also like to introduce the 2018 RSC representatives from the Estevan Regional Safety Committee Worker Rep, Karen Schulzen, who's unfortunately unable to attend. The Yorkton Regional Safety Committee Worker Rep, Stephen Buchek. Did I say that right? Close. Busick. And Lloydminster Regional Safety Committee Employer Rep, Jennifer Keach. That is our 2017 and incoming 2018 Board of Directors members. Thank you very much. Everyone has had an opportunity to view the agenda. If I can call for a motion to accept the agenda as presented, or adopt the agenda as presented. And if you don't mind, please, if you're making a motion, please say your name. Jason Davidson, and a second. Alexandra. All in favor? Thank you. I got to get used to these, the system. Adoption of the minutes from February 2016, 2007, or February 16, 2017 AGM. I need a minute or a motion to adopt the minutes from the last meeting. Carolyn Bagnall, second. Dave Hagan. All in favor? Motion passed. Business arising out of the minutes, we had no extending business other than the governance issues, which we will discuss later on in the meeting. We'll go through that portion later on. The annual report for the chairperson, president, as well as the operations report is contained in your package. We're not going to go through the full presentation of them. They are available to everybody and in your packages. If I could get a motion to accept the chairperson's report, president's report, and operations report, as well as all regional safety committee reports. Vernon? Motion. Pearl, as a second. All in favor? Motion passed. And the 2017 auditor's report and financial statements was reviewed early this morning by the executive as well as the board. And could I get a motion to accept the 2017 auditor's report and financial statements? Warren Douglas. Second? Dion Malikoff. All in favor? Motion passed. Also provided in your package was the appointment of the 2018 auditor. I need a motion to call for KPMG to appoint KPMG as auditor for 2018. Carolyn Bagnall, second.
I'll second that,
Errol Fisher, all in favor? Motion passed. One of the things, I'll get to it actually in a second. And a resolution regarding the acts and of officers and directors. I need to call a motion that all acts and decisions of the officers and directors of the Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, the SCSA, throughout 2017 be ratified and approved. Can I get a motion? Lena Gork. Second by Keith Bird. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passed. Going forward and for the governance motions, everybody has provided a card to be able to vote. If you guys can, use those cards. We want to make sure that we have a secure count to make sure that it is, if there is any, if it's a close vote, that we do have a defined line. Next section is 9.0, which is the SCSA annual awards presentation. And I'm excited to be able to present this. The awards were reviewed by committee, and it's exciting to be able to present them. The first one that we have is a Corporate Leadership and Safety Award for 2017. The Corporate Leadership and Safety Award recognizes a member company, their dedication, outstanding contribution, commitment, and leadership to enhancing the health and safety in the workplace. This year, we've recognized 4 different companies for achieving this. And the first one, we'll start out by congratulating CNS Builders Limited for Moose Jaw region. So if I can call upon Bryce Chelsberg, did I say that right? To accept the award on behalf of CNS Builders Limited. Congratulations. The second Corporate Leadership and Safety Award goes to, I'd like to congratulate Elite Metal Builders from the Swift Current region. I'd like to call upon Chris Penner and Brendan Ebner from Elite Metal Builders to accept the award. And for this company, this is the second year in a row they've been awarded this. So keep up the good work, and it's great to see the leadership that they're putting forward. Congratulations to Prime Construction from the Yorkton Esterhazy region. I'd like to call upon Bryce Field from Noble Construction to accept this award. Sure. And congratulations to RH Electric from the Yorkton region. And I'd like to call on Jason Hirokyu. Thank you, sir. I had to pause there, take a second look at it. Again, this is the second year in a row for this contractor as well, so well done. It's great to see contractors putting forward this much effort. Now, the second set of awards that we're going to be handing out is for the Safety Practitioner Award for 2017. The Safety Practitioner Award recognizes an individual's dedication, outstanding contribution, and commitment to the success of their region. I'd like to congratulate Brian Hilderman from the Yorkton region. So is Brian here? If he is. Brian is unfortunately unable to attend, but I'd like to pass on my congratulations to him. Job well done. Second one, I'd like to congratulate Karen Solson. Did I get that right? Is Karen here? Unfortunately, she's not here as well, but job well done and congratulations. And congratulations to Tim Cooper from the Prince Albert region. I'd like to call upon Tim, if you're here right now, to accept this award. And the third award that we have is the RSC Regional Safety Committee Distinguished Progress Award for 2017. The RSC Distinguished Progress Award recognizes the Regional Safety Committee for their dedication and outstanding contribution to the promotion and improvement of health and safety in the construction industry. This year I'd like to congratulate the Lakeland Regional Safety Committee. I'd like to call upon Jennifer Keach and Rob Monroe to accept the award on your behalf of the Regional Safety Committee. And this is the second year as well that Lakeland Group has received this award. And if you guys haven't had a chance to have a look at some of the things that the Lakeland Group has been doing within their community, from motorcycle runs to community awareness, to having speakers. They've been doing excellent work within that region to really raise the bar and bring awareness to safety. So, you know, well done and congratulations. So that is the awards portion. I'd also like to take right now to recognize all the SCSA board members throughout 2017 for their dedication, time, commitment to the association. It's invaluable, both for the association and for the industry as a whole. Thank you for all the time that you guys have volunteered to show up to meetings, attend. I know oftentimes it's not easy to get the travel, to arrange your work, arrange your schedules, and the participation is appreciated. We'll be holding a formal dinner event in the fall to honor and recognize the board members for their years of service. At that time, we'll also recognize the present incoming 2018 board members. For new business, I'd like to introduce for the WCB updates, Mr. Kevin Mooney. Kevin Mooney is the Director of Prevention at the Saskatchewan Workers' Compensation Board. Kevin brings with him over 17 years of experience in delivering health and safety solutions to the workplace. Was recognized as the Saskatchewan Safety Professional of the Year in 2011, and more recently received the Premier's Award for Excellence in the Public Service in 2015. Kevin obtained his Master's of Business Administration from the University of Fredericton and is a Canadian Registered Safety Professional. Kevin is a proud father of 2 young boys, 5 and 10 years of age, and he keeps busy coaching youth football in the community. So if everybody can give Mr. Mooney a warm welcome for the WCB report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invite, and look forward to working with your organization. I think one of the things that my introduction didn't touch on is my background. So I have spent most of my career working in the private industry, and both as an advisor working for one of the other funded safety associations. So I think I understand both the challenges that customers face out there in industry, and also the challenges and opportunities that a funded safety association face on a day-to-day basis. For my update, I'm fairly new in this role, about 6 weeks, so it was going to be a fairly short update, and then I watched Mike Carr's presentation. Of course, he stole a bit of my thunder, so some of the things I was going to talk about was the final injury rates for 2017, which he already mentioned. A couple of campaigns that we're going to be focusing on this year, and one relates to your industry quite closely. And then some of the work that we're doing to support industry with an emerging issue, that being cannabis in the workplace. We're going to be partnering with an organization here and rolling out some information sessions on that. So I think what I'll do is, Mike already touched on the injury rates and the fact that the time loss injury rate has plateaued this year at 1.86%. I think I would share his concerns around we might be plateauing as an industry in Saskatchewan, and the fact that culture plays a big role in this. He talked about briefly how youth, 25% of youth that are entering the workforce believe that injuries are a normal part of life in Saskatchewan. And at WorkSafe, we actually have a monthly rolling poll where we poll the public as well. And so our results would share what Mike was talking about. In fact, 1 in 5 of the working public in Saskatchewan continually tell us on a monthly basis that getting injured at work is a normal part of work in Saskatchewan. And that's a social norm that we need to change. And the fact that we have a tremendous amount of influence on each other in the workplace. So I'll give you an example. I'm going through the Tim Hortons drive-through the other day, get up to the cashier to pay for my coffee, and she goes, "Hey, the person in front of you bought your coffee." So I'm like, great. So what do? Pay it forward, right? Buy a coffee for the person behind me, and that's kind of the way it goes, right? And that's kind of the whole thing behind social norms. And so this year we're putting a big focus on safety, or injuries are not normal in Saskatchewan. And when you think about, if I put that into the workplace perspective now, 1 in 5 people thinking that getting injured is normal. So now I go to a SCSA training event, I learn about fall protection or PPE or whatnot, and now I go out to the workplace and my coworkers or my supervisors not wearing the hard hat, the safety glasses, the safety harness, what are you going to do, right? You're probably going to copy what your coworkers are doing. Okay, so, you know, the bright spot about that though is 4 in 5 workers think that injuries are not normal in the workplace. And so what we're going to try and tap into with this campaign is getting Saskatchewan people telling their stories about how preventing injuries in Saskatchewan is normal. And that's going to be an ongoing communication this year. So we're going to see lots of stories around that. Another campaign we're going to be focusing on is asbestos awareness. It continues to be the #1 cause of fatality, workplace fatality in Saskatchewan. At least those were the numbers in 2016. And when you look at most of the homes and buildings, we're using asbestos right up to 1990. And if you look at the average homes that are built in Regina and Saskatoon and whatnot, a lot of them were built in the 70s. And so we want to bring this level of awareness, heighten this level of awareness with the public. And so we're going to be out at home shows. We're going to be in a couple of large stores like Home Depot and whatnot, having face-to-face discussions with the public. It's interactive. We've got a quiz and whatnot. I'll be on CTV Live talking about this as well. We'll know we've had an impact. Right now, currently, 47% of the public can only identify one location in their house where asbestos might be present. And so we're looking to increase that to having more than 70% of the public identify more than one location, and they'll understand the mitigation strategies behind what they can do if they're going to hire a laborer or contractor to come and do some work. So looking to do a lot of education around that. Finally, cannabis in the workplace. We've heard a lot of concerns from industry. July 1st, 2018 is just around the corner. So we're partnering with another organization in the province. I don't want to name the name because we haven't signed the contract yet, but we're going to be contracting with a local law firm and an HR professional and providing real hands-on workshops throughout the province in March and April to start. We've already got 7 locations picked: Regina, Saskatoon, North Battleford, Prince Albert, Estevan, Yorkton, and Swift Current. And part of this workshop is we want it to be practical. So you're going to hear the case law behind what's needed in a impairment policy, how it links to accommodation, and you'll hear about the discipline side too, because there'll be a HR professional there. And you'll walk away with a working policy. So you're actually going to work from a template as part of this workshop and have something to go back to your workplace with. So that's one of our ways. You know, Mike talked about the 5 pillars there for WorkSafe, and one of them is partnerships. And so we're looking to support industry with that. So I'll definitely, once we have the dates and locations down, I'll share that with Colin, and we actively look for your support to attend these events. And very much look forward to working with your industry going forward. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. On to the next portion of business for today, and that is the governance changes. Now, I might have to look at Sherry here to give me a hand to get this up and running properly. Give me some technical advice here. Was I supposed to have this open for the safety awards?
I got it.
I didn't know that. My bad. Click faster.
Currently. There we go. You're good with that?
Yeah. So before I get into the discussion of the governance modernization, first thing I'd like to thank a number of people that helped put the work in and the time. And this was a lot of work and a lot of time, and there was a lot of people involved in it. It involved consultation with industry, presentations to industry, legal support, advisory support, So we had a number of members on our governance committee, as well as alternates, to make sure that we had those seats full during the process, to make sure that we had the input necessary. So I'd like to thank the people that participated in that governance committee and the many lengthy meetings that they attended, that being Keith Bird, Mark Novkoski, Jason Davidson, Jason McDonald, Jeff Sweet, Gunnar Passmore, Pearl McNevin-Williams, Dana Pidell, Carolyn Bagnall from our board directly that sat on the board or sat as alternates. I'd also like to thank Dave Smith from Logia Consulting, who helped us through the governance process and understanding modern governance process and modern governance, as well as the law firm of McDougall Gully that helped us through the bylaw changes, making sure that we're in compliance with the most current not-for-profit organization bylaws, to make sure our bylaws were in proper compliance. So I'm going to go over an overview of what the process was. In May of 2016, the Board of Governance session top priorities included bylaw amendments, specifically in regards to the board size and structure. It was discussed and came from the board. The board made the decision that it was time to review our governance, make sure we were with modern governance procedures, and make sure that we were in alignment both with our structure as well as our bylaws. An ad hoc committee has been active since the fall of 2016, developing options and gathering input both from membership and from industry. Had a lot of discussions, as well as viewed similar organizations to ours to make sure that we were, standardized within how modern governance works. In 2017, which was the last AGM, we had a vote, and the members supported a direction to undertake the necessary review to set up the framework that was presented to formulate recommendations for voting and implementation in 2018 at this AGM. So as a group last year, we presented a general overview, structure, general idea, and wanted to put it to membership to make sure we had the feedback that this was the direction that membership wanted to go, as well as the board, and wanted to see that membership was supporting us the process. We gave them a general idea of it, and they supported that was the direction they wanted us to continue with. The SCSA, so part of the reason why we did this, the SCSA has not restructured the size of the board since its inception in 1995. Since then, laws have changed for nonprofit organizations. They've actually changed a number of times since then over the time, but our bylaws have not been reviewed and updated to make sure that we're in compliance with current laws. The organization from when we started back in 1995 has changed significantly in terms of both operational budgets, staff, scope of work that we're doing, services we're providing in a number of different areas. So our mandate that we've been given from industry and from the board directives has significantly grown. We want to continue promoting and improving safety within the construction industry in Saskatchewan. The current structure is not in line with industry standards for an efficient best practices. And as I had mentioned before, we took a lot of time to really review. We brought on consultants that provide us good information on what is best practices overall for an organization, first of our size, budget, and that's comparable to other organizations similar to ours. There has been a need to review the governance model, in particular the board of directors structure, which has an unusually large component of board member positions. You guys could all tell that by the length of the introductions earlier in the meeting today. We had some time, and having a board of 36 people, plus or minus, depending. It's difficult for a lot of people to be able to attend, to maintain consistency with the board, and manage that in a board meeting. The large number of board members has made the effectiveness of governance a challenge overall. The SCSA Agreement with the Workers' Compensation Board mandates a balance between worker and management, and that shall be maintained by the governance, by the governance and according to or with the proposal that the governance committee is putting forward today. The current board composition does not directly address balance amongst the industry rate codes and the industry sectors, being residential, commercial, and industrial groups, as well as our workforces being general workforce and organized labors. The current board composition does not directly have balance there. It doesn't readily allow the board to nominate board members to address strategic priorities. So in the current board structure, board members are appointed through various associations, trades groups, and throughout industry, and the board struggles with maintaining skills, a balance of skills, whether it be human resource ability, legal background, finance background, business background, management background, industry background, to be able to maintain all those skills, to have a well-rounded board, to be able to manage and effectively support the Saskatchewan Construction Association, as well as appropriately represent the construction industry. So a big portion of that we wanted to address, to make sure that we have the ability to make sure that we have a good balance of skills and abilities amongst our board members to address the issues that arise. A change of board structure and composition has required a lot of legal and regulatory bylaw work. We needed to make sure that the changes that we were making, first of all, were in compliance with the laws governing our association, as well as in compliance with the agreement that we have with WCB, as well as meeting the needs of the construction industry and the expectations of our membership. Significant research, discussion, and exploration of options and alternatives had been undertaken. Again, we brought aboard a consultant to help us support, give us understanding of how other groups, boards and associations of our size or of similar size and directive function. Realizing the future state of the SCSA board directions has required significant project management, change management, and administrative work. I spent some time thanking the participants on the governance committee, and that being said, I also want to take some time right now to thank the actual staff on the SCSA that has the board has put through them or put a lot of work to them to be able to accomplish this. There's been a significant increase in administrative requirements and help that the committee has needed, even to put together things like PowerPoints for annual general meetings, maintaining proper minutes, logging information, supporting the group as a whole, helping us get the information emails out there, helping us set up industry calls. There's been a huge burden that has been put on a number of the SCSA staff to help support us, and I want to thank the efforts that they put in. It's been wonderful to get to work with them and see their commitment as well throughout this process. The current ad hoc governance committee, I am very happy to say, has completed their mandate. It's been a 2-year long process between formulating it, getting it passed by the membership at the last board meeting, taking the information from the membership at the last meeting and compiling it to a finalized motions for this meeting. The proposed bylaws have been reviewed and through legal counsel to be up to date and in compliance with the Not-for-Profit Act of 1995. The terms and limits of a board director's position, the term limits, so a few of the things we'll discuss here before I get into that. We had a look also not just at the board structure, term limitations, board discipline, participation, and a number of different things as we were going through this process. We wanted to make sure that we were setting up this board to function currently and be able to take us for the next, decade or more. And I hope it's set up to go quite a bit beyond that through the process. The term limits of the board director position also allows the opportunity for board renewal and succession. So this is an opportunity that we wanted to make sure was in place with the board to allow, first of all, individual board members to self-reflect. Do I want to continue on? Do I want to keep going? Allow the other board members to vote, yeah, we'd like you to stay on. We need that continuity. We need people to be able to stay on for long term. We also need people to assess, you know, do I want to continue? Am I putting in the effort that I need to be, or do I want to open up the position for somebody else within industry that may bring a whole new perspective or new energy to the board? We wanted to allow that to give the board the opportunity to address the changes in the industry, marketplace, as well as maintaining perspective on the history and not only that, but the history that the future board state is going to create. A full and healthy engagement from board members will be an expectation going forward. Part of the problem we've had, 2 years ago, we were having a lot of struggles with meeting quorum and getting people to be able to make it to board meetings. So some of the changes in the bylaws address some of the opportunities that we may have, be able to implement in the future, things of use like use of technology, conference call meetings, electronic email, that sort of stuff, to be able to vote, communicate, and improve the opportunities to be able to address items and hopefully better communicate with amongst ourselves. A few other things that I want to, kind of talk about and address. The governance committee took a lot of time to make sure that we were addressing all the potential changes, making sure that we were communicating with industry. We've provided a number of opportunities for communication. We've had the bylaws circulated since it would have been, Ed, was it beginning to mid-December? We had the draft of the bylaws circulated mid-December. We've circulated this information to industry through the Safety Advocate, a number of different publications, through email reports or email communications coming out from the SCSA. We were able to hold a industry conference call where we went through a presentation providing the information of what the structure changes, what the bylaw changes, and what the proposed changes would entail and would represent, allowing industry to call in and ask us questions, ask the governance, provide concerns, give us information, feedback to consider. After that, we also put all that information online to allow anybody that wasn't able to call in on the industry sessions to be able to view it. It's on YouTube right now. Yep. So even after today, feel free to have a look. It's out there for you. I'd like to thank the governance committee for the amount of work that they did put in. Even after that, we put that, being it on YouTube, we've allowed additional questions to be able to be asked since that point as well. I've got to go through what our motions are. There are 3 separate motions in regards to board structure, terms, and acceptance of the bylaws. So the first motion, and I'll ask somebody to make the motion and a seconder, and we will have a vote for whether it be ratified. So the new board structure, and what we're asking is that the SCSA membership support a motion to change the number of board members to between 9 and 12 positions, consisting of representation as follows: 2 commercial members, 2 industrial members, 2 residential members, 2 organized labor members, and 2 general workforce members, and up to 2 board strategic appointments. Now, I want to make sure that we have an understanding of what those strategic appointments mean. What those strategic appointments are for is, as the board determines strategic direction or items that they would like addressed. For example, if we want to engage clients, get involved in Aboriginal engagement, involving SAS mining, maybe get somebody from legal on board. It allows the board to say we have a strategic plan that we'd like to select and appoint to these positions. Now, I'm going to show the second motion before, just to explain a few things, just to understand, because there's some term durations on this that actually, I want to make sure it's clear what everybody's voting for before the vote happens. So just as an overall explanation on how the board is going to be structured. Can you guys hear me okay if I'm not standing right beside the mic? So it'll be 12 positions consisting commercial, industrial, residential, and the 4 positions from labor, 2 strategic positions. The chair and vice chair will be selected from that existing 12 board, so or 12 members of the board. Okay, the chair and vice chair positions have to be selected from the 10 top, not from the strategic positions. The chair and the terms of the board, and we'll move into this to the second vote, but it's being proposed that the chair be a 2-year term, the vice chair be a 2-year term, and the past chair be a 1-year term. And this is to help support, maintain consistency, understanding, education, and process through it. There's a discussion about making sure that, especially in these positions, and other board members have the appropriate training and understanding to be in those positions, and to maintain consistency both for the management group and for industry to change the duration of those positions. Also, the board positions be 3 years with a renewal by a board vote after 3 years. So after 3 years, we're going to be at, currently it's continuous appointment, for as long as the association wants to appoint, whether they're engaged or whether they show up or regardless of how much participation they have. So the board positions will 3 years with renewal by the board vote. So after 3 years, the position will then come open for vote. You can then determine, I'd like to step back from the board and leave my position open, or you can say I'd like to propose to keep my seat, and the board would then vote on maintaining you in that position going forward. It gives opportunity for board renewal, and also gives opportunity to maintain that history and understanding of the past. As well as the board's nominated director, so that is the board's strategic selection. Those strategic selections will be for a 1-year duration. So those 2 strategic points will be for a 1 year. And being that they're strategic, we're bringing somebody on board, or the board would be bringing somebody on board for a specific reason. The goal is to have something accomplished while they're there, and the duration for they're there. We'll have them, what the recommendation is to have them on board for 1 year, depending if the strategic plan or what was decided has been executed, with a potential extension of up to 2 years. So it gives the board a year to accomplish something and up to 2 if necessary, and then allows the board to again redetermine, do we want to bring in somebody from, direct from one of the other industry associations, or a member of industry, a client, or somebody else that might bring in some knowledge, experience, or background to support the board on that. The last one will be the bylaws. So if I can get somebody to make a motion that the SCSA membership support a motion to change the number of board members to between 9 and 12 positions, consisting of the representation as indicated on the board. Carolyn, make the motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
I'll give it to you on this one. What's your name again?
Clayton.
Clayton. All in favor, please hold your green cards for in favor. Or actually, hold on, sorry. Before I ask for the all in favor, I'd like to open the floor up to discussion, questions, or comments, concerns to the membership. Back, Mark.
Thanks, Ryan. Just a question about, I'm fine with the motion. I just want to clarify so it says between 9 and 12. So the chair and the vice chair would come from this membership, but their position is not backfilled, so they're essentially playing 2 roles. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how does the past chair figure in here? Because that would be 13
No, so, no, those two chairs are board chairs. So it's 12 members, including the chair and the vice chair. The chair and vice chair are part of the 12 members. They're not separate from those 12 members.
So you end up with 3 of your 12 potentially, or 3 of your 10 more likely, that would be doing 2 roles, right?
Yeah, yes. Part of this, and the other thing I should mention as well, currently we have a structure of 30-plus board members, as well as a 6-member executive committee, which has some additional meetings. Part of, and just to address part of your comments, part of the bylaw changes that we made was dissolving the executive committee, so there will be, going forward, there'll be no more specific executive committee. All business will be managed at the board level by full board, with obviously the executives making, or the executive positions being made up of being on board seats. So to make sure, other side of that, we're bringing more feedback into the decisions that are being made. The other side of that is there will be more commitment from the board members, so additional meetings to be held as part of that. In addition to, and some of the stuff that we didn't get into on this, one of the biggest concerns of the governance committee when we were bringing this forward was to make sure that we're maintaining, because we are reducing the size of the board, that we're maintaining industry communication, industry perspective, and we also mandated in the bylaws, for those of you that had that nighttime reading material, real entertaining stuff, we mandated committees to be able to address this. And so we are, similar, Mark, to your organization has an advisory committee. We've also implemented a regional safety committee, which is going to be rebranded as the advisory committee. We're going to be opening that up to make sure that we're getting feedback from all the regional committees, make sure we're getting feedback and allow attendance from general membership to be able to come in on those committees, provide us feedback, and make sure that the membership has greater support and greater opportunity to provide feedback, provide information, and participate in the direction of the SCSA. The other committees are governance committee and audit committee as well, and ad hoc committees that the board feels necessary. But we spent a lot of time, because of the seats and the changes and how the structure is changing, we did spend a lot of time considering how much time was going to be spent by, or that we're not losing the perspective and the feedback from industry, and that's why we bylaw mandated a requirement for an advisory committee on there for the SCSA to make sure that we're maintaining that direction. The other part with this too, that I'll kind of talk about before we do the final vote on the motions, and I lost my train of thought. We want to make sure that we're supporting industry and that we're getting the feedback necessary from them. Is pretty much what it comes down to. So, any other questions, comments, feedback? Dion?
Am I supposed to have a green card?
Not sure, can he? B-rate codes.
B-rate code company owners or reps have cards. We have some board members that are not B-rate company owners, but we probably do that short.
Okay. One of the other things, and I also want to address that, we didn't cover it in the slides as well, that came up was the change between going from the appointed to the nominated structure. We want to give more opportunity for construction companies to actually have an opportunity to have a position on the board and be able to provide feedback and provide input. It gives us a chance to, and the process is outlined to be very transparent, open, to be able to accept nominations from anybody within industry, and it gives the board a chance to review. It's not going to be a direct selection process. It's going to be a nomination process. Make sure that we review it, make sure that we're transparent with industry on selections, nominations, why we selected. We're in the process right now of setting up a skills contingent for nominations, and like I said before, to make sure that we have well-rounded abilities and skills within the board to be able to manage an association of this size. Mark, you had your hand up there.
Me? I just have a question. Maybe this isn't the time to have a question. But
No, now is the time.
okay. When it comes to nominations, I guess, is it the nominator's responsibility to put them to categorize themselves, or does the board do that?
No, it'll be up to the nominees. The board, we're not here to tell you what skills you have or what class you have. It'll be up. We want the feedback. We want the nominations, that sort of stuff. And the way we want to make sure that it's industry telling us, and it's a transparent process. Mark?
So I was gonna wait to motion three, but since you brought it up, I guess I'll talk about it here, which is so the nomination process, and the question we just had is a great question, and I guess that'll be outlined in policy at some point by the new board. They'll say, okay, here's how you go about nominating yourself into the company. If you fit in multiple categories, which many contractors do.
Yep.
You could nominate yourself, I suppose, for multiple categories.
Absolutely.
So you, what the one concern I have with respect to the bylaws as structured today is that there isn't a requirement that the board members be members of SCSA, right? So they can come, nominees can come from outside of the membership, which I'm a little concerned about, given that membership is not voluntary in the organization, right? So the members they have no choice but to be members. And so ensuring that the board is representative of those members is really critical. So I would encourage in the development of the policy for the SCSA board or the governance committee to ensure that there is a primary emphasis placed on the selection of members as board members. Because I think that's going to be really critical to ensuring representation going forward.
We actually had a really lengthy discussion on that in the governance committee, Mark. One of the things right now that we looked at, some of our most significant contributors aren't direct members currently, because as it stands currently, right now, our board of directors is not necessarily made up of B-rate code members. And if you don't mind me singling out a few, Carolyn is not a direct B-rate code member. Chris Garrett is not a B-rate code member. But their contribution and their support and impact has been invaluable to the board. So it's something we did have a very lengthy discussion to make sure that we were addressing that and put a lot of consideration into that. We decided, do we want to go down that route of selection of specific to membership, or do we want to allow membership to be able to nominate a representative of a large group like yourself, Mark, that represents a large group? You shake your head no. For example, we did not want to, or we did not include in the bylaws for the specific reason because we've had such positive impact from people that aren't directly membership, and we did have a lengthy discussion on that. Any other questions? So if there isn't, we've had a motion made and it's seconded. All in favor, if you don't mind holding up your green cards, hold up your hands and green cards. I think it'd be. How about we do this now? All opposed? Motion passed. That's easier than counting, hey? Second motion, be it proposed and resolved that the SCSA Board of Directors support the Governance Committee motion to place the following term limits on the Board of Directors positions effective immediately. Chair, 2-year terms. Vice Chair, 2-year terms. Past Chair, 1-year term. Board position, 3 years with renewal by board vote after 3 years. And Board nominated Director or strategic seats, 1 year with potential for up to 1 year renewal by board vote. Can I get somebody to make a motion? Vernon Hunt. Make a motion. Seconded by Jason Davidson. Again, I open it up to the floor for any questions. No problem.
I don't want to get into the what-if scenario, but when it comes to chairs and the board position could be in 3 years and the chairs could be in 2 years, and like, is there going to be a specific strategy, or if somebody gets nominated as chair on their 3rd year of term, does that automatically get out, or the board kicks them off, or, you know, yada, 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 I guess, more of a math question.
Governance committee and the board will have to decide. Typically, if you're being nominated for a vice chair position, that is, you're going to be participating or announcing your commitment for, or if you accept that nomination, you're going to be announcing your commitment to be able to stay on the board for that length of time. If you do get voted off the board, then there'll have to be a renomination process for that position. Any other questions?
And I guess the question you're asking is you could automatically be on for 7 years. 3 years as a board member, then you become vice chair, that's another 2, and chair, that's another 2. It could be 7 years. Automatically, right?
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passed. And finally, again, I am not going to sit up here and read the entire booklet of bylaws to you. We've circulated this throughout industry in a number of different ways. It's been on the SCSA website. We've provided a number of call-in discussions on it. We've provided opportunity to be able to review the bylaws. It's exciting stuff if you take the time to read it. Do I have any questions before we get into the motions of it? Do we have any questions on the bylaws? Again, we went through a lot of legal consultation and support. Dave Smith, and I want to extend a thank you for all the effort that you put in helping us create these. It was invaluable to us. If I can get somebody to make a motion that the SCSA membership adopt the proposal bylaws as circulated. Jason? Sandra? Any questions, comments? Alexandra. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you guys very much. That is the last bit from the governance portion and from our AGM. I want to take a quick moment here before we adjourn to thank everybody for taking the time out of your days to come out here, support the SCSA. I want to thank our speakers early in the day, Mike Carr and Kevin Mooney for coming up here and speaking. It's great to see everybody coming out here and participating. I'm looking forward to moving forward to safety and within the province, within our industry, and continuing to drop those numbers that were outlined to us. If I can get somebody to make a motion to adjourn.
Can I just interrupt?
Hold on, Errol's got something. This close.
I just want to thank Ryan for the work that he did. Thank God we didn't start this. We started the road when I was chair, but the work that this guy did in the last couple of years, and him and his whole committee, but I'm glad Ryan was the chair when we went through this. Thank you very much, Ryan. Good
Thank
job.
you. Appreciate it, Errol. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. Motion to adjourn? Milena. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Just give the award, anyone that received an award, could you come back to this screen back here?
And the other thing too, if I didn't give you your beautiful carrying case, come on up and grab it. And full board, maybe we'll take a quick 5-10 minute break. We're doing pretty good on schedule. So let's go with a 15-minute break, give people a chance to mingle and chat a little bit, and the board can reconvene. Do you guys want to do it in here? Or in the, yeah, in here. Reconvene back in here in 15 minutes or so. Thank you, everybody.